A CEO's Daughter. First part. The expensive wheelchair made almost no sound as it rolled across the polished marble floor of the luxury restaurant. Emma Richardson, 16 years old with long blonde hair that caught the light from the crystal chandeliers above, moved herself to the corner table her father had reserved. The table was decorated with pink balloons and had a beautiful 3-layer chocolate cake sitting in the center, surrounded by wrapped gifts that looked more like business obligations than heartfelt presents. Emma's father, Robert Richardson, was one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. His company, Richardson Industries, employed thousands of people and made millions of dollars every year. But today, on his daughter's birthday, he was nowhere to be seen. Again. The accident had happened 3 years ago when Emma was 13. A drunk driver had crashed into their family car while Robert was driving Emma home from her dance recital. The crash had changed everything. Emma's spine was damaged, leaving her unable to walk. Her mother, unable to handle the stress and guilt, had left them both 6 months later. Since then, it had been just Emma and her father, though he seemed to spend most of his time trying to forget what had happened by burying himself in work. Emma stared at the birthday cake with its 16 candles flickering in the dim restaurant lighting. The other diners were talking and laughing at their tables, but she felt completely alone, even though she was surrounded by people. She had asked her father if she could just have a quiet birthday at home. But he had insisted on this fancy restaurant. He said it would be special, that he would be there by 7 o'clock sharp. It was now almost 8:30. The waitress, a kind woman in her 40s named Sarah, approached the table carefully. She had been watching Emma sit alone for over an hour, and her heart was breaking for the young girl. "Would you like me to bring you something to drink while you wait, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently. Emma looked up with tired eyes. "Just water, please. I don't think my father is coming." "I'm sure he'll be here soon," Sarah said, though she didn't really believe it herself. She had worked at this restaurant for 10 years and had seen Robert Richardson cancel reservations at the last minute many times before. As Sarah walked away, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She already knew what it would say before she even looked at it. "Emergency meeting, can't make dinner, credit card is on file, order whatever you want, happy birthday. Dad." Emma felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was tired of crying over her father's broken promises. This was supposed to be different. He had promised her that her 16th birthday would be special, that nothing would interrupt their dinner together. The restaurant was getting busier as the evening went on. Families were coming in to celebrate various occasions. Couples were having romantic dinners, and groups of friends were laughing together over shared meals. Emma felt more alone with each passing minute. She was about to call a taxi to take her home when she noticed a commotion near the restaurant entrance. A man was talking quietly but firmly to the hostess, and she could see the frustration on his face. Behind him stood a little boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a slightly wrinkled button-up shirt and dress pants that were a little too short for his growing legs. The man was Marcus Williams, a single father who worked 2 jobs to support his son, David. Marcus was a janitor at an office building during the week and worked at a grocery store on weekends. He had been saving money for months to take David out for a special dinner for getting straight A's on his report card. But when they arrived at the restaurant, they were told that there would be a 2-hour wait because they didn't have a reservation. Emma watched as the hostess shook her head apologetically at Marcus and his son. She could see the disappointment on the little boy's face as his father explained that they would have to go somewhere else. The boy's shoulders dropped, and he looked down at his shoes. Without really thinking about what she was doing, Emma called out across the restaurant, "Excuse me." Marcus and David turned to look at her, along with several other diners who were curious about the voice that had broken through the quiet dinner conversations. "Would you like to join me?" Emma asked, gesturing to the empty chairs at her large table. "I have plenty of room, and it looks like you've been waiting for a while." Marcus hesitated, not sure if this was some kind of joke. He could tell by the expensive decorations and the fancy cake that this was someone's birthday party, and he didn't want to intrude. But something about the girl's eyes told him that she was genuinely reaching out. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked, walking closer to Emma's table with David following behind him. "We don't want to interrupt your birthday celebration." Emma looked at the empty chairs around her table, at the cake with candles that were starting to drip wax, and at the gifts that her father's assistant had probably ordered online without much thought. "There's no one else coming," Emma said simply. "It would be nice to have some company." Marcus could hear the sadness in her voice, even though she was trying to hide it. He looked down at David, who was staring at the beautiful birthday cake with wide eyes. "What do you think, buddy?" Marcus asked his son. "Should we join this nice young lady for her birthday dinner?" David nodded enthusiastically. "Can we really? It's such a pretty cake." Emma smiled for the first time that evening. "Please sit down. I'm Emma, and today is my 16th birthday. Well, it was supposed to be." Marcus pulled out a chair for David and then sat down himself. "I'm Marcus, and this is my son David. We're here celebrating his straight A's on his report card." "Wow, straight A's," Emma said, turning to David with genuine interest. "That's amazing. What's your favorite subject?" David's face lit up as he started talking about his love for science and how he wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up. Emma found herself actually enjoying the conversation, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Sarah, the waitress, approached the table, smiling at the unlikely trio that had formed. "Well, this is nice. Are you all ready to order?" Marcus opened the menu and his eyes widened when he saw the prices. Even with the money he had saved, he wouldn't be able to afford much more than an appetizer for him and David. He started to feel embarrassed and wondered if he had made a mistake by accepting Emma's invitation. Emma noticed Marcus's expression as he looked at the menu, and she understood immediately. Her father might not show up for her birthday, but he had left his credit card information with the restaurant. "It's my birthday," Emma announced to Sarah, "and I'd like to treat my new friends to dinner. Whatever they want." Marcus started to protest, but Emma held up her hand. "Please, it would make me happy. I don't want to celebrate alone, and you're helping me not be alone." "It's the least I can do." As they ordered their food and started talking, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she belonged somewhere, even if it was just for this one evening with these two strangers who had become unexpected friends. The first part of an extraordinary evening was just beginning, though none of them knew yet how much this chance meeting would change all of their lives. A CEO's Daughter. Second part. As their food arrived, the conversation between Emma, Marcus, and David flowed naturally. David was telling Emma about his science project on planets, his eyes bright with excitement as he described how he had built a model of the solar system using painted tennis balls and coat hangers. "My dad helped me paint Jupiter," David said proudly, looking at Marcus with admiration. "He worked really late that night after his job, but he still helped me get the stripes just right." Emma felt a pang in her chest. She couldn't remember the last time her father had helped her with anything, let alone stayed up late to work on a project with her. "That sounds amazing," she said to David. "I'd love to see pictures of it sometime." Marcus noticed the wistful look in Emma's eyes. "What about you, Emma? What do you like to do?" Emma hesitated. Before the accident, she had loved dancing, swimming, and playing tennis. Now those activities felt like they belonged to a different person, a different life. "I used to dance," she said quietly. "Ballet, mostly. But that was before—" She gestured vaguely at her wheelchair. "Before what?" David asked innocently. Not understanding why sitting in a wheelchair would stop someone from liking things. Marcus gently placed his hand on his son's arm, but Emma smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. I was in a car accident 3 years ago. I can't walk anymore. David considered this for a moment with the straightforward logic that only children possess. But you can still like dancing, can't you? Even if you can't do it with your legs? Emma blinked in surprise. It was such a simple observation, but somehow no one had ever said it to her before. All the doctors, therapists, and counselors had focused on what she couldn't do anymore, what she had lost. No one had suggested that she could still love the things she used to love, just in a different way. I guess I never thought about it like that, Emma admitted. My friend Tommy's sister is deaf, David continued, taking a big bite of his pasta. But she still loves music. She feels the vibrations and watches the way people move when they dance. She says music isn't just about hearing it. Marcus looked at his son with pride. Despite all the challenges they had faced as a family, David had somehow maintained his ability to see the world with optimism and acceptance. Emma found herself really looking at Marcus for the first time. He was probably in his early 30s, with kind eyes and gentle hands that showed he worked hard for a living. There were small paint stains under his fingernails, and his shirt was clean but worn. Everything about him was different from the wealthy, polished men who usually surrounded her father's world. "What kind of work do you do, Marcus?" Emma asked. Marcus hesitated, suddenly self-conscious about his jobs. He was sitting in one of the fanciest restaurants in the city with a girl who was clearly from a wealthy family. I clean offices downtown during the week, and I work at Peterson's Grocery on weekends." "That sounds like really hard work," Emma said, and Marcus was surprised by the respect in her voice rather than judgment. "It is sometimes," Marcus admitted, "but it's honest work, and it lets me provide for David. That's what matters to me." Emma thought about her father, who made more money in a day than Marcus probably made in a year, but who couldn't even show up for her birthday dinner. David is lucky to have a dad who cares so much about him. Marcus could hear something deeper in her voice. "What about your family? Are your parents here tonight?" Emma's smile faded slightly. "My mom left after the accident. She said it was too hard, seeing me like this every day. And my dad, well, he was supposed to be here tonight, but he had an emergency meeting. He always has emergency meetings." David stopped eating and looked at Emma with the serious expression that children sometimes get when they recognize sadness in adults. "That's not fair. Birthdays are important." "It's okay," Emma said automatically, the response she had practiced for 3 years whenever people asked about her family. "No, it's not," Marcus said gently but firmly. "You deserve to have people who show up for you, Emma. You deserve better than sitting alone on your birthday." Emma felt tears threatening again, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of self-pity or loneliness. They were tears of relief at finally having someone acknowledge that her situation wasn't okay, that she deserved more. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said to Marcus. "How do you do it? Raise David by yourself, I mean. Don't you ever get scared that you're not enough?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Every single day," he admitted. "David's mom left when he was 2. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother, that it was too much responsibility. Some days I feel like I'm failing him, like he deserves someone who can give him more than I can." "But you're here," Emma pointed out. "You saved money to take him out to celebrate his good grades. You helped him with his science project even when you were tired from work. You show up for him." "That's what love looks like," Marcus said simply. "It's not about having money or buying expensive things. It's about being present, about making someone feel like they matter." David had been listening to this conversation with the intensity that children bring to discussions they sense are important. "Emma," he said suddenly, "do you want to make a wish on your birthday candles? We never lit them." Emma looked at the cake that had been sitting forgotten in the center of the table. The candles had burned down quite a bit, but they were still usable. I don't know what to wish for anymore. I do, David said confidently. You should wish for people who don't leave, people who stay and eat cake with you even when it's not their birthday. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride at his son's wisdom. That sounds like a perfect wish to me. Sarah, the waitress, had been watching the table from a distance, and she could see that something special was happening. She approached with a lighter and helped relight the 16 candles on Emma's birthday cake. As Emma closed her eyes to make her wish, she found herself thinking not about what she had lost, but about what was sitting right in front of her. Two people who barely knew her, but had chosen to spend their evening making sure she didn't feel alone. When she blew out the candles, David clapped enthusiastically. "Did you make your wish?" "I did," Emma said, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. "And you know what? I think it might actually come true." As they shared pieces of the birthday cake, Emma realized that this was the best birthday she had had since the accident. Not because of the expensive restaurant or the fancy decorations, but because for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she was part of a family again, even if it was just for one night. But the evening was far from over, and none of them could have predicted what would happen when Emma's father finally decided to make an appearance. A CEO's Daughter. Third part. They were finishing their dessert and laughing at one of David's stories about his pet hamster when Emma saw her father stride through the restaurant entrance. Robert Richardson looked exactly like what he was, a powerful, wealthy man who was used to getting his way. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed, his silver hair was styled flawlessly, and he wore the expression of someone who expected the world to revolve around his schedule. Emma's stomach dropped. She had been having such a wonderful evening, and now she knew it was about to end. Her father's eyes scanned the restaurant until he spotted her table, and she could see his confusion as he noticed Marcus and David sitting with her. "Emma," Robert said as he approached the table, his voice carrying the tone he usually reserved for business meetings. "I apologize for being late. The Singapore merger required immediate attention." He didn't acknowledge Marcus or David, didn't seem to notice the birthday cake or the fact that his daughter had been celebrating without him. His eyes were already darting to his phone, checking for messages even as he spoke to her. "Dad, I'd like you to meet my friends," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "This is Marcus and his son David. They joined me for dinner." Robert finally looked at Marcus and David properly, taking in Marcus's work-worn hands and David's slightly rumpled clothes. Emma could see the judgment forming in her father's eyes, the same look he got when he was evaluating a business deal that didn't meet his standards. "I see," Robert said coolly. "Well, I'm sure they need to be getting home now. It's getting quite late for a school night." The dismissal was clear, and Emma felt her heart sink. But Marcus didn't move from his chair. "Actually, we were just hearing about Emma's interest in dance," Marcus said calmly, meeting Robert's gaze without flinching. "David was telling her about his friend's sister who experiences music differently. It was a fascinating conversation." Robert looked annoyed at being contradicted. "Emma doesn't dance anymore. That part of her life is over." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She had heard her father say similar things before, but never so bluntly, never in front of other people. David, who had been quietly observing this exchange with the perceptiveness that children sometimes possess, suddenly spoke up. "Why would it be over? Just because she sits in a wheelchair doesn't mean she can't love dancing." Robert looked down at David with the kind of forced patience adults use when they think children don't understand complex situations. "It's complicated, son. Sometimes when we grow up, we have to leave childish things behind." "Dancing isn't childish," David said with the confidence of someone stating an obvious fact. "And Emma isn't that old. She's only 16. My teacher, Mrs. Washi..." Rodriguez says 16 is still young enough to dream about anything you want. Emma felt something stirring inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in 3 years. It was hope, small and fragile, but undeniably present. Marcus could see the effect this conversation was having on Emma, and he could also see how uncomfortable her father was with the direction it was taking. "Mr. Richardson," he said respectfully but firmly, "your daughter is remarkable. In the time we've spent with her tonight, David and I have both been impressed by her kindness, her intelligence, and her strength. You should be very proud of her." Robert's expression softened slightly, but his discomfort was still evident. "Of course I'm proud of Emma. I provide everything she needs. The best doctors, the best physical therapy, the best equipment money can buy." "But what about what she wants?" Marcus asked gently. "What about her dreams?" "Dreams don't pay bills or fix spinal injuries," Robert said sharply. "I deal in reality, Mr. I'm sorry. What did you say your last name was?" "Williams. And you're right. Dreams don't fix spinal injuries. But they do fix broken spirits. And your daughter's spirit isn't broken, Mr. Richardson. It's just been waiting for someone to notice it." Emma had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement. No one had ever stood up to her father like this before. No one had ever defended her dreams or suggested that she still had any. "Dad," Emma said quietly, but with more strength in her voice than she had used in years, "I want to try dancing again. Maybe not the way I used to, but in a new way. David is right. I can still love it even if I do it differently." Robert looked at his daughter, really looked at her. For the first time in months, he could see something in her eyes that he hadn't seen since before the accident. Hope, determination, life. "Emma, I don't want you to set yourself up for disappointment. The doctors said I would never walk again," Emma interrupted. "They didn't say I could never dance again. They didn't say I could never dream again." David reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "I think you would be a beautiful dancer, Emma, even sitting down." Marcus watched as Robert Richardson, one of the most powerful men in the city, was rendered speechless by his 8-year-old son's simple, honest words. Sarah, the waitress, who had been observing the scene from a respectful distance, approached the table. "Excuse me," she said gently, "but I couldn't help but overhear. My daughter teaches adaptive dance classes at the community center downtown. Kids and adults with all different kinds of abilities. They perform twice a year, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? There are classes for people like me?" "Honey, there are people like everyone in those classes. What matters isn't how your body moves, it's how your heart moves. And from what I've seen tonight, your heart has some beautiful moves." Robert looked around the table at his daughter's face, glowing with possibility for the first time in years. At Marcus and David, who had somehow given his daughter a gift he hadn't been able to give her in 3 years, and at Sarah, who had offered another piece of hope. "Emma," Robert said slowly, his voice softer than it had been all evening, "if this is something you really want to try, we can look into it." Emma's smile was brighter than all the crystal chandeliers in the restaurant. "Really, Dad? You mean it?" For the first time, Robert seemed to see his daughter not as a victim of a terrible accident, but as a 16-year-old girl with dreams and possibilities ahead of her. "Yes," he said, and then, looking at Marcus, added, "And I think Mr. Williams is right. I should be proud of you, not just for surviving what happened to us, but for the person you are, the person you've always been." David clapped his hands together. "This is the best birthday party ever!" Emma laughed, and the sound was like music. "You know what? It really is." As the evening wound down, Robert insisted on paying for everyone's dinner, but more importantly, he asked Marcus for his phone number. I'd like David and Emma to stay in touch if that's all right with you. I think they're good influences on each other. Marcus smiled. I think that would be wonderful. 3 months later, Emma performed her first adaptive dance routine at the community center. In the audience sat her father, who had rearranged his schedule to be there, Marcus and David, who cheered louder than anyone else, and Sarah the waitress, who had become a family friend. Emma's routine was a solo piece performed entirely in her wheelchair, a beautiful expression of grace and strength that brought tears to everyone's eyes. But what made Robert cry wasn't just the beauty of his daughter's dance. It was the joy on her face, the confidence in her movements, and the realization that he had almost let his own fear and guilt rob her of this moment. After the performance, as they all went out for ice cream to celebrate, David announced that he had decided what he wanted to be when he grew up. I still want to be an astronaut, he said, but I also want to help people find their dreams again, like Emma did. Emma reached over and hugged the little boy who had changed her life with one simple question at a restaurant. You already do that, David. You already do. The birthday dinner that had started with such loneliness and disappointment had become the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. Emma had found her passion again. Robert had found his way back to being a father instead of just a provider. Marcus had found friends who valued him for who he was rather than what he had. And David had learned that sometimes the best way to celebrate your own achievements is to help someone else celebrate theirs. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the simplest acts of kindness. A single question, mind if we join you, had changed everything for a girl who thought she was destined to spend her 16th birthday alone. Instead, she had discovered that family isn't just about blood relations or shared last names. Sometimes, family is about the people who choose to sit down at your table and help you blow out your candles, even when they barely know your name. And sometimes, the best birthday gift you can receive is the reminder that you are worthy of love, friendship, and dreams that reach far beyond anything you thought possible.